The wind screaming off the Greenland ice sheet slices through exposed skin in seconds. A brutal, freezing gale that stands as the only natural shield in one of the most hostile environments on Earth. But on this particular morning, the cold was the least of the concerns for the crew of the USS Gerald R. Ford, the newest and most technologically advanced aircraft carrier in the United States Navy. The Ford is not merely a warship. It is a floating city of steel, sensors, and firepower, a $13 billion symbol of American naval dominance, built to project power to the furthest corners of the globe. As it moved through the Denmark Strait, the strategic choke point between Greenland and Iceland, its mission appeared routine, a NATO demonstration of Arctic security and unity. Above the flight deck, sailors in heavy parkas watched the green glow of the aurora borealis ripple across the night sky. What they didn't know was that the same electromagnetic disturbance creating that beautiful display was masking something far more dangerous. Flying just 50 feet above the churning Black Sea, a formation of Russia's most advanced stealth fighters, the Su-57 Felon, was closing in. The Su-57 is not just another aircraft. It is a hunter engineered to eliminate high-value targets. And this was no exercise. Under their wings hung 47 M2 Kinzhal hypersonic missiles, weapons capable of reaching speeds near Mach 10. So fast they compress and tear apart the air ahead of them. The pilots had their orders. Safety's off. Execute. Inside the Combat Information Center of the Ford, radar operators monitored the surrounding skies. Contacts flickered on and off their screens, ghostly returns distorted by Arctic weather, magnetic anomalies, and ice fog. The ship's advanced radar systems, capable of tracking tiny objects from hundreds of miles away, filtered the anomalies as atmospheric interference. That was the critical mistake. The artificial intelligence software, trained mostly in calmer environments, dismissed the clutter as noise. The Su-57s were counting on that blindness. At 100 miles out, the Russian formation broke silence for a split second. Execute. The fighters pulled up sharply, climbing to altitude to release their payload. Suddenly they were visible, for hostile symbols bloomed red across the radar screens. Vampire. Vampire. Inbound. Naval code for incoming anti-ship missiles. Speed, Mach 10. Reaction time, seconds. The escort destroyers USS Thomas Hudner and USS Ramage responded instantly. Their Aegis combat systems activated and vertical launch cells erupted open, sending SM-6 interceptors screaming into the Arctic sky. Smoke trails streaked overhead as the fleet attempted to build a wall of steel. But hypersonic weapons do not fly predictable paths. The Kinzhal missiles maneuvered violently, shifting course mid-flight and confusing defensive tracking. One missile was lured away by the Ford's electronic warfare systems, slamming into the ocean in a towering explosion that lifted the carrier's stern from the water. Another was torn apart by the Phalanx close-in weapon system, but fragments still rained down across the deck. Two missiles broke through. One struck near the waterline, detonating deep within the hull and damaging propulsion shafts. The other tore through the flight deck just aft of the island. A 2,000-pound warhead traveling at hypersonic speed does not simply explode. It vaporizes steel. Jet fuel ignited. The hangar bay became an inferno. The carrier shuddered violently. Fire alarms screamed. Smoke filled corridors. Yet the Ford did not die. Built for survivability, its watertight compartments limited flooding. Damage control teams, drilled relentlessly for such a moment, move without hesitation. Flash gear on. Breathing apparatus secured. They entered burning compartments to contain the flames. General quarters, general quarters. All hands man your battle stations. The voice over the ship's system was steady, anchoring the crew amid chaos. The Su-57s turned north, believing they had delivered a decisive blow. They were wrong. Despite the damage, the forward catapults remained operational. Within minutes, F-35C Lightning II fighters were airborne. Where the Su-57 relied on maneuverability and speed, the F-35 relied on stealth and sensor fusion. It sees without being seen. The Russian pilots scanned their radar. Nothing. 50 miles behind them, AIM-1 20 AMRAAM missiles were already inbound. One Russian jet erupted in flame, spiraling into the freezing sea. Another followed. The hunters had become the hunted. Beneath the surface, a Virginia-class attack submarine detected a Russian Oscar-class submarine transmitting targeting data. With the carrier struck, the rules of engagement changed. 2 torpedoes launched. The Russian submarine attempted to dive and deploy decoys. Moments later, a dull underwater detonation echoed to the Arctic depths. In Washington, the decision came quickly. Immediate naval action was authorized. Escalation without hesitation. NATO forces mobilized across the North Atlantic. A blockade formed along key Arctic routes. The message was unmistakable. The USS Gerald R, Ford later limped into Reykjavik Harbor, scarred and smoke-stained. Dozens were injured. The world had shifted overnight. Markets trembled. Oil prices surged. Defense budgets swelled. The vulnerability of massive surface fleets in the age of hypersonic weapons was no longer theoretical. Repairs began. Systems were upgraded. Doctrine evolved. Investment surged into directed energy defenses, unmanned vessels, and space-based tracking networks. The Arctic was no longer a distant frontier. It had become a front line. The Ford eventually returned to sea, hardened, modernized, more cautious. The lesson lingered in every radar sweep and every training drill. In the age of hypersonic warfare, reaction time is measured in seconds, and superiority is never guaranteed. The Arctic wind still howls across Greenland's ice. The aurora still dances in the sky. But beneath that beauty lies tension, silent, watchful, waiting. Because in modern war, silence is not peace. It is a space between detection and impact.